Before we jump into today's story, here's a quick teaser. A wealthy man loses everything in an instant, only to be saved by someone who has almost nothing. What follows will surprise you. Comment below with the city or country you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. It had been a long day for Marcus Reid, as the CEO of one of the city's most prestigious hospitality groups. His mind was constantly spinning with board meetings, investor updates, and hotel renovations. That evening, he decided to take a different route home. Wanting a quiet drive to clear his thoughts, he turned down a narrow street, absent-mindedly scanning the empty sidewalks when, out of nowhere, a group of masked men blocked his path. One had a bat, another, something sharp in his hand. Marcus barely had time to react before the driver's side door flung open. "Out, now," one of them barked. Heart-pounding, Marcus complied, raising his hands. In less than a minute, they had taken his phone, wallet, watch, and his luxury car. He was left standing on the curb, shaken and breathless, with no money, no phone, and not even an ID. Marcus looked around, disoriented. There was no one to call, no ride to hail, and for the first time in his adult life, Marcus Reid, a man whose time was normally booked in half-hour blocks by two assistants, was stranded. A few blocks away, Zoe Carter was waiting at a bus stop, exhausted from a double shift at the diner. She tugged her jacket tighter around her. Her last coins jingled in her hand, just enough to get home. The bus arrived, and Zoe boarded. She counted her change carefully and dropped the coins into the fare box before heading to an empty seat near the back. She leaned her head against the window, eyes closed, soaking in the quiet moment. Then she heard it. "I'm sorry, sir. No fare, no ride," the driver said flatly. She opened her eyes. A man stood at the front, looking completely out of place. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair tousled, and though he tried to explain, the driver was unmoved. "I was robbed. I swear. I don't have a phone or wallet. I just need to get home." Zoe sat up, watching the exchange. The man's voice was steady but tired. Most people would have looked away. Most people did, not Zoe. She stood up and walked to the front of the bus. "I've got his fare," she said, pulling out her last coins. The driver looked at her skeptically. "You sure?" She nodded without hesitation. "Yeah, let him ride." The man turned to her, stunned. Their eyes met briefly. She didn't flinch or expect anything in return, just a quiet determination in her eyes. "You don't have to do that," the man said, voice low. "I already did," Zoe replied. "You'd better take a seat before he changes his mind." Marcus nodded, a little embarrassed but grateful, and sat down near the middle of the bus. Zoe returned to her seat near the back. From his spot, Marcus glanced back occasionally, curiosity growing. Who was she? She wasn't trying to impress him. She didn't know who he was. And for the first time in a long while, Marcus felt truly seen, but not for his wealth or title. Just as a man in need. When the bus slowed at the next stop, Zoe stood and made her way toward the door. Marcus quickly stood up. "Hey," he called after her. She turned slightly, eyebrows raised in surprise. "Thank you," he said. "You have no idea how much that meant." Zoe gave him a small smile. Everyone needs help sometimes. And with that, she stepped off the bus and disappeared into the night. Marcus watched her go, stunned by the sincerity of the moment. She was just gone. No name, no way to reach her. But something about her stuck with him. As the bus continued toward downtown, Marcus stared out the window, his thoughts racing. That girl, Zoe, probably didn't have much. Her uniform, her tired eyes, and the way she carefully counted her coins all said enough. And yet, she helped him without hesitation. For someone used to luxury, control, and polished conversations, the gesture had shaken him to his core. It was humbling, jarring, and strangely moving. Eventually, the bus reached its last stop near downtown. Marcus stepped off and started walking the few blocks back to his high-rise building. The city lights reflected off the glass and chrome of the buildings, contrasting sharply with the dim interior of the city bus he had just been on. "Mr. Reid?" the doorman asked as he approached the entrance. "Are you all right?" Marcus forced a tired smile. "Just a rough night. Daniel, can you let me in?" The doorman opened the door without another word, still eyeing his disheveled appearance with concern. Inside his penthouse, Marcus dropped onto the couch and exhaled deeply. The apartment was immaculate, floor-to-ceiling windows, designer furniture, silence. But for once, the space felt cold, empty. His thoughts lingered on Zoe. Her face, her voice. Across town, Zoe was already back home in the tiny two-bedroom house she shared with her mother. Her day was done, her act of kindness already fading into the blur of everyday life. For her, it had been nothing more than a small gesture, a reflex born of empathy. But for Marcus, it was everything. The next morning, Marcus woke up with one thought running through his mind: he had to find her. He didn't know her name, just a face, a voice, and that uniform, but something inside him insisted he had to try. As he passed through the lobby, he turned to his doorman. "Daniel?" "Yes, sir. Can you help me find something?" "Of course. I need to know what diners are along the bus line that runs through downtown. Specifically ones where the staff wears blue uniforms." Daniel blinked. "Blue uniforms? It's a long story," Marcus replied, "but it's important. I'll get right on it." Marcus nodded, stepping outside with a strange new determination. Maybe this made no sense. Maybe it was crazy, but something told him, whatever Zoe sparked in him last night was worth following. Marcus Reid wasn't the type to chase people. In his world, people came to him, employees, clients, reporters. But today, he was chasing a girl with no name and nothing to gain. It felt absurd, and yet, it was the only thing that made sense. By noon, Daniel had compiled a list of local diners near the bus route where Marcus had been stranded the night before. There were 7 of them. 5 used blue uniforms. 3 were still family-run. One of them, Daniel said, had been struggling recently. Sunrise Grill. Marcus read aloud, scanning the notes Daniel had jotted down. "Corner of 8th and Maple. That's the one I'd start with," Daniel replied. "It's been around for decades. Owners can't afford new uniforms. But the staff shows up every day anyway." Marcus nodded, grabbed his jacket, and headed out without telling anyone where he was going. At Sunrise Grill, the lunch rush was in full swing. Waitresses darted between booths, balancing plates of pancakes and mugs of steaming coffee. Behind the counter, Zoe Carter wiped her hands on a towel and handed a check to a customer with a practiced smile. "Y'all have a great day," she said. As she turned, she caught sight of a man stepping through the front door, clean suit, polished shoes, but something softer in his posture. Her heart paused when she recognized him. The man from the bus. Marcus scanned the diner briefly, then saw her behind the counter. Their eyes met. Zoe blinked in surprise, unsure what to do. He walked up slowly. "Hi," he said. "I don't know if you remember me." "I remember," she replied with a chuckle. "You're the guy who looked like he'd never been on a bus in his life." Marcus smiled, guilty. I just wanted to say thank you." Again, Zoe raised a brow. "You tracked me down just to say thank you?" "Well, I didn't exactly know how else to find you," he admitted. "I didn't get your name." Zoe Carter." "Marcus Reid," he said, offering his hand. She shook it, still wearing her skeptical smile. "You didn't have to come all the way here." "You know," she said, folding her arms. "I know, but last night, it stuck with me. You gave something when you had nothing to gain. I'm not used to that." Zoe shrugged. "Didn't feel like a big deal." "It was. And I'd like to repay you somehow." She laughed. "You really don't have to. Let me buy you lunch. At least." Zoe hesitated. "Marcus, you're clearly from a different world. And I've got another shift starting in 20 minutes. Then I'll wait." That caught her off guard. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. "Fine," she said eventually, "but only if you don't mind diner coffee and a reheated turkey melt." "I'll take it." An hour later, they sat in a corner booth, 2 mismatched mugs between them. "So," Zoe said, "you never told me what you do." "I run a hospitality company. Hotels, mostly. Figures," she said. "You've got the whole rich and composed thing going on." He smiled. "It wasn't always that way. I started out washing dishes in a hotel kitchen. My dad made me work every job before he'd let me near a boardroom." Zoe sipped her coffee. "Sounds smart." Sounds cruel when you're scrubbing grout. Marcus joked. But yeah, I guess it worked. And now you're the big boss? Something like that. Zoe leaned back. So what made you take the bus that night? Marcus looked down at his mug. I needed air. My car was out of sight for 1 minute. Then, gone. And no one recognized you? He shook his head. That was the weird part. I'm always Mr. Reid to someone. But not on that bus. Not to you. I didn't recognize you, Zoe admitted. But even if I had, I'm not into all that. Rich people, fancy lives. Doesn't impress me. Marcus studied her for a second. Good, because I think I'm getting tired of it too. The conversation drifted from serious to silly. They talked about diner regulars, childhood memories, favorite music. Marcus found himself laughing more than he had in weeks. Zoe was sharp, funny, grounded. There was no pretense with her. When the clock above the counter hit 3 o'clock, Zoe sighed. That's my cue. Gotta get back to reality. Marcus stood too. Thank you for the sandwich and the company. Zoe smirked. You're welcome, but don't make a habit of showing up here like a rom-com CEO. No promises. He paused. Can I see you again? Zoe raised an eyebrow. You mean outside the diner? Yeah, dinner or lunch, something not involving bus fares. She considered for a moment. All right, but just so we're clear, I'm not quitting my job to ride around in helicopters. Fair enough. He grinned, pulled a card from his wallet, and slid it across the table. Text me. I'll set something up. Zoe took it but didn't commit. We'll see. That evening, back at his office, Marcus stared at his phone, half expecting it to light up with a message. It didn't, and that made him smile. Zoe Carter wasn't the type to be won over with business cards and charm. If she texted, it would be because she wanted to, not because he was anyone important. Meanwhile, at the diner, Zoe tucked the card into her bag and went about her work like nothing had changed. But something had, and she knew it. She'd seen hundreds of men in suits pass through the city. But this one? He looked at her like she mattered. Not as a favor, not out of guilt, but with curiosity and quiet respect. For the first time in a long while, she found herself wondering what might come next. 2 days had passed since Marcus Reid last saw Zoe Carter. He tried not to obsess over his phone, tried not to check it every time he heard a vibration or imagined one. But no text came, not a single word. At first, he thought maybe she lost the card, or maybe she never meant to call. But deep down, Marcus knew the truth. Zoe wasn't the kind of woman to chase after anyone. If she was going to text, it'd be on her own terms. Still, the silence gnawed at him. He distracted himself with work, back-to-back meetings, site inspections, budget reviews, but even in the middle of a high-stakes investor call, he found his mind wandering back to her. The girl in the blue uniform, the kindness in her eyes, the way she didn't care who he was or how much he had. Then, on the evening of the third day, as Marcus sat alone in his penthouse with a glass of wine in hand, his phone lit up. Zoe Carter, if you still want that lunch, I'm free tomorrow at 1. But no suits, no drivers, just you. Marcus smiled, already typing a reply. Marcus Reid. Deal, just tell me where. The next afternoon, Marcus parked his own car, a modest black sedan. Nothing flashy. Outside a cozy mom and pop sandwich shop tucked between a laundromat and a bookstore. It was far from the 5-star places he was used to. But it was exactly what Zoe had in mind. Inside, Zoe was already seated at a small table near the window. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, hair pulled back casually. She looked comfortable, real, and more beautiful than he remembered. You're early, she said with a smirk as he approached. You're here too. I work around the corner. Figured I'd beat the lunch crowd. He slid into the seat across from her. So, no suits allowed? I just wanted to make sure you showed up as you, not as some boardroom version of yourself. Fair enough, Marcus said, glancing at the handwritten menu on the wall. What's good here? The turkey avocado melt. Trust me. They placed their orders and settled into easy conversation. Marcus talked about growing up in a working-class family. How his dad taught him to value grit over gloss. Zoe told him about her mom's illness. How she picked up night shifts at the diner to help with hospital bills. No siblings? Marcus asked. Nope. Just me and Mom. He nodded. That's a lot to carry. I'm used to it, Zoe replied. Life didn't come with a plan B. You just make it work. Marcus admired the resilience in her voice. It was the kind of strength money couldn't buy, and that he rarely saw in the world he lived in. As their food arrived, the conversation deepened. You know, Marcus said between bites, the day I met you, I didn't realize how much I needed that moment. Zoe tilted her head. Because of the robbery? No. Because I'd forgotten what real kindness looks like. No angle, no strings. You just did it. Zoe chuckled softly. Honestly, I didn't think twice. You looked like you needed help. I did, Marcus said, more than I knew. A quiet pause lingered between them. Then Zoe looked up. So what do you want from this? From me? Marcus blinked. What do you mean? You're used to getting what you want, right? Business deals, meetings, people. I'm not trying to be difficult. I just want to know why you're really here. He looked her in the eye. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. And because I want to know you, not just for a day or a conversation, but for who you are. Zoe didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked out the window. Considering his words, a long silence passed before she met his gaze again. I don't do games, Marcus. I don't have time for drama or second guessing. My life's complicated enough. Neither do I, he said. I'm not here to impress you or throw money around. I just want to be honest. She nodded slowly. All right, one step at a time. They finished their lunch and walked outside. The sun had come out, casting a warm glow on the sidewalk. Zoe paused at the corner. I've got to get back, she said. I'll walk you, Marcus offered. She hesitated, then nodded. They walked in silence for a block. Side by side, no hand-holding, no big gestures, just a quiet, shared space between two people from very different worlds. At the diner's back entrance, Zoe turned to him. This was nice, she said. Marcus smiled. Let's do it again. Maybe. She opened the door and stepped inside, but not before glancing back at him. Thanks for showing up, as you. And then she was gone again. Back at the office, Marcus felt lighter. It wasn't the kind of meeting that ended in sparks or dramatic declarations. But it was honest, grounded, and that was rare in his life. Later that week, as Marcus prepared for a quarterly strategy meeting, he received a text. Zoe Carter. You ever fix a leaky faucet? Asking for a friend who doesn't want to call a plumber. He laughed out loud. Marcus Reid. I'll bring a wrench and a YouTube tutorial. Zoe Carter. Tomorrow, after my shift. And don't be late. Marcus locked his phone, a grin spreading across his face. Maybe this wasn't a fairy tale. Maybe it wasn't fast or flashy. But it was real, and that, he thought, was exactly what he'd been missing. Marcus Reid hadn't held a wrench in years. But he wasn't about to back down now. Zoe Carter didn't strike him as the type to ask for help lightly. So when she sent that text about the leaky faucet, he knew it wasn't just about plumbing. It was a test. A chance to prove he wasn't just talking the talk, that he could show up. Roll up his sleeves, and get his hands dirty. He showed up at 6:45 sharp, toolbox in hand, wearing jeans and a faded black t-shirt. It felt strange, dressing down, doing something manual, but it also felt good. Zoe lived in a small, second-floor apartment above a pawn shop. The hallway smelled like old carpet and cigarettes, but her door was freshly painted. A small potted plant sitting beside it. He knocked once. Zoe opened the door in pajama pants and a loose sweater. Her hair damp like she just showered. You actually came, she said with a smile. Told you I would. She stepped aside and let him in. The apartment was tiny, kitchenette, living room, a hallway leading to a single bedroom, but it was clean and cozy. Pictures of her mom were pinned to a corkboard near the fridge. And a guitar leaned against the couch. The sink's over there, she said, pointing to a narrow kitchenette. It's been dripping for a week. Marcus crouched beneath the sink, twisting valves and checking connections. She watched from the couch, half amused, half impressed. You really know what you're doing? I googled. Fix leaky faucet, before I came. Marcus admitted, but I'm figuring it out. She laughed, and something in her relaxed. This wasn't the man from the headlines or glossy magazine covers. This was just a guy, sitting on her kitchen floor with his sleeves rolled up. 10 minutes later, the dripping stopped. "Well, look at that," he said, standing up. "Repaired, maybe. Guess I won't need that plumber after all. I accept payment in coffee," he said with a grin. "Deal, but only if you don't mind instant." He didn't. They sat on the couch, each with a mug of lukewarm coffee, and talked like old friends. No business talk, no grand gestures, just music, movies, food, life. "So why me?" Zoe asked eventually. "You could be dating actresses or supermodels or CEOs. What makes you think we make sense?" Marcus took a breath. "Because with you, I don't have to be Marcus Reid, CEO of Reid International. I can just be me. I don't get that often." She looked down at her cup. "It's not that simple, Marcus. We live in different worlds. Maybe, but we don't have to stay in them." Zoe didn't reply immediately. She stared out the window, watching the soft glow of streetlights flicker against the glass. "I'm not used to this," she said finally. "People showing up, following through. My mom's had a hard life, and I've had to pick up the pieces. Relationships haven't exactly been easy. I'm not trying to make promises I can't keep," Marcus said gently, "but I do want to try." She met his gaze, searching his face for any sign of a lie. "Okay," she said, "but if this turns into a mess, I'm blaming you." "Fair enough." In the weeks that followed, Marcus and Zoe slipped into a rhythm. She didn't move into his world, not fully, but they found ways to meet in the middle. Late night walks after her shift, quiet dinners at her place, trips to the bookstore on Saturdays. Zoe even convinced him to try a street taco stand once, and he declared it better than the Michelin-starred place in Paris he'd visited last year. Daniel, Marcus's assistant, was the first to notice something had changed. "You've been different," Daniel remarked during a board meeting. "Less tense, smiling more." Marcus shrugged. "Guess I'm just seeing things clearer lately." But not everyone was thrilled. His board members started asking questions about his schedule, his personal life, the woman they'd seen with him near the office. Some whispered that she was a distraction. Others worried it would affect the company's image. One afternoon, while Marcus was preparing for a meeting with international investors, his cousin and business partner, Landon Reid, stepped into his office unannounced. "We need to talk," Landon said, shutting the door. Marcus leaned back in his chair. "This about the new property in Austin?" "No, it's about her." Marcus's jaw tensed. "Zoe?" "Yeah, look, I'm not trying to get in your business, but people are talking. She's a waitress, man, from a diner. She doesn't belong in our world. She belongs in mine," Marcus said quietly. Landon raised a brow. "You serious about this?" "I am." "Well then, you better be ready, because the media, the shareholders, hell, our own family, they won't see it the way you do." "I don't care how they see it. You should." Marcus stood, anger rising. "Zoe is smart, grounded, and more genuine than half the people I deal with in this office. She's not a liability. She's the first real thing I've had in years." Landon didn't push further, but his silence was loud. After he left, Marcus stared out the window, the city stretching endlessly beneath him. He knew Landon wasn't wrong. The higher you climb, the more people try to pull you down for reaching outside the lines. But Marcus had made up his mind. He wasn't letting this go. That night, he met Zoe outside her diner, walking her home like always. But something felt off. She was quiet, distant. "What's going on?" he asked. She hesitated. "Someone from the media came by. Said they were doing a story about you." Marcus's stomach dropped. "What did they say?" "They asked about us. About me. Where I worked. What I earned." "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't want this to touch you." "I knew it would," Zoe said softly. "I just didn't think it would be this fast." He reached for her hand. "We'll get through it, together." Zoe looked up at him, eyes uncertain. "I want to believe that, Marcus. I really do." They stood in the quiet of the street, a million things unsaid between them. The headlights of passing cars painted shadows across their faces. And in that fragile moment, neither of them knew what tomorrow would bring. But they held on, if only for tonight. The headlines came faster than either of them expected. Billionaire Marcus Reid linked to small-town waitress. Mystery woman shakes up Reid International's inner circle. CEO's romance with diner server raises eyebrows on Wall Street. By the time Marcus opened his inbox Monday morning, the media frenzy had already snowballed. Gossip sites, business columns, social media, everyone had an opinion. Some praised him for breaking the mold. Others mocked the idea of a billionaire falling for someone outside the elite. And Zoe Carter? She was at the center of the storm. She didn't show up to their usual morning coffee. Didn't reply to his texts. Didn't pick up his calls. Marcus tried her apartment. No answer. He finally drove to the diner just after her shift should have started. Inside, the usual clatter of dishes and buzz of conversations filled the air, but Zoe wasn't behind the counter. One of the other waitresses, older and kindly, recognized him. She took the day off. The woman said cautiously, wiping her hands on her apron. Didn't say much, just looked tired. Marcus thanked her, left a generous tip, and headed back to his car. He didn't go to the office that day. Instead, he sat outside Zoe's building for hours, waiting. Finally, as dusk fell, she walked up the block, hoodie pulled over her head, headphones in, a grocery bag in her hand. She stopped short when she saw him. "I've been trying to reach you," he said quietly. "I know," she replied, unlocking the front door. He followed her up the narrow stairs without speaking. Once inside her apartment, she set the groceries down and folded her arms. "Why didn't you tell me it would be like this?" she asked. "I didn't think it'd blow up this fast. But it did, and now I'm the punchline in every tabloid. I've got people taking pictures of me when I walk out of work. Some reporter even called my mom." "I'll fix it," Marcus said. Zoe shook her head. "You can't fix this, Marcus. You can't buy it away. This is my life, and right now, it feels like it's not mine anymore." He stepped forward. "Then let me help you take it back." "How?" Her voice cracked. "By moving me into a high-rise and hiding me away from the cameras?" "No. By standing beside you. By showing everyone this isn't some scandal, it's real." Zoe blinked, holding back tears. "You want to make us a press release?" "No. I want us to be strong enough that the noise doesn't break us." She turned away, staring at the window. "I don't know if I'm built for this, Marcus. I didn't grow up with people watching my every move. I didn't ask to be part of your world." "I didn't either," he said, "but I chose you, and I still do." She didn't say anything, but she didn't ask him to leave either. That night, they sat on her couch again. No coffee, no distractions, just silence and closeness. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Zoe eventually rested her head on his shoulder. And Marcus, for the first time in days, felt her walls soften again. Over the next week, Marcus put his reputation on the line for her. He called a press conference, one Zoe didn't attend, and addressed the rumors head-on. "I'm not going to pretend this relationship isn't unconventional," he said, "but I won't apologize for it. Zoe Carter is kind, smart, and one of the most authentic people I've ever met. Our relationship is real, and I won't let gossip or judgment dictate my life or hers." The backlash was immediate, but so was the support. Some saw him as reckless. Others hailed him as refreshing. Either way, Marcus didn't care. The only opinion that mattered was Zoe's. Back in her apartment, she watched the press conference alone. Her phone buzzed with messages from friends, coworkers, even her old high school teacher. Most were supportive, some were curious, but one text stood out. "Mom, he stood up for you. Proud of you, honey." Zoe smiled, holding the phone to her chest. Still, not everything could be solved by statements or bravery. Marcus's board was getting restless. At their next quarterly meeting, Landon pulled him aside. "You made your speech," he said, "but it's not going away." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you've got 3 pending acquisitions. All stalled. Investors are nervous. And our reputation, yours, specifically, is part of the equation." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "You're saying I have to choose?" "I'm saying you need to think about the bigger picture." Marcus didn't answer right away. He just looked out the massive glass wall behind them, watching the skyline glow under the setting sun. "I'm not walking away from her," he said finally. "Even if it costs you everything?" Marcus turned. "Everything that matters, I already found in her." Landon exhaled. "Then I hope you're ready to fight." That night, Marcus found Zoe at the bookstore they used to visit together. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor between two shelves, reading quietly. She looked up when he approached. "Hey, I missed this," he said, sitting down beside her. "Me too." They talked for hours, about the madness, the pressure, the future. Marcus didn't try to convince her. He just listened. Eventually, Zoe asked the question that had been looming between them. "What if this doesn't calm down? What if the cameras never stop? Then we keep living." Marcus replied, "We go to diners. We read books. We fix faucets. We build something real." She smiled. "You make it sound simple." "It's not, but it's worth it." Zoe leaned her head against his. "Then let's try." They sat like that for a long while. Two people choosing to face the storm, together. The headlines faded, but the tension didn't. In the weeks following Marcus's public declaration, the media circus quieted just enough for Zoe Carter to breathe again. Cameras still lingered outside the diner occasionally, and some customers whispered behind menus. But the tidal wave of attention was finally ebbing. Zoe thought maybe, just maybe, they'd turned a corner. Until the invitation arrived. A sleek black envelope bearing the gold emblem of Reid International appeared at her door one afternoon. Inside was a formal invitation to the company's annual philanthropy gala, a high-profile event known for attracting CEOs, politicians, and celebrities. Zoe had seen photos from previous years, Marcus in tuxedos, surrounded by socialites and billionaires' daughters. Now her name was on the guest list. Marcus had mentioned it once in passing. "You'd love it. There's a live jazz band and no one actually eats the food." Zoe stared at the invitation for a long time. Later that night, she met Marcus for dinner at a quiet rooftop restaurant, one he'd reserved just for the two of them. City lights sparkled below, but his focus was solely on her. "I got the invite," she said, placing the envelope on the table. He looked at it, then at her. "Too much? Honestly, I don't know. You don't have to go if you're not ready." "That's just it, Marcus. I don't know if I ever will be." He reached across the table. "You don't have to fit into a mold. You don't need to become someone else. I just want you there, because it's my world. And I want you in it." Zoe took a deep breath. "Okay, I'll go, but only if I can wear sneakers." He laughed. "Deal." The night of the gala, Zoe stood in front of her closet in a mild panic. Her usual wardrobe, diner uniforms, jeans, concert tees, wasn't built for high society. But her neighbor, a retired seamstress named Mrs. Langley, came to the rescue. She lent Zoe a sleek navy blue dress and helped her pin her curls into a loose updo. "Let them see who you are," Mrs. Langley said, handing her a pair of silver flats. "Not who they expect you to be." When Marcus arrived to pick her up, his breath caught in his throat. "You look stunning." Zoe smirked. "You look all right too, Mr. Reid." They arrived at the gala in a black car, stepping out into a sea of flashing cameras. Marcus took her hand and didn't let go, walking her inside with the quiet confidence of someone used to the spotlight. But tonight, his eyes were only on her. Inside, the venue sparkled with chandeliers, glass walls, and polished marble. Waiters glided by with trays of champagne. A string quartet played in the corner, and all around, wealthy elites turned to watch them enter. Zoe felt like an outsider in a museum, on display, studied, judged. One woman approached within minutes, wearing a smile so tight it could crack glass. "You must be Zoe," she said sweetly. "I've heard things." Zoe blinked. "Hopefully some of them are good." The woman laughed airily and drifted away. Marcus whispered, "You okay? I've been through worse. Once spilled hot soup on a guy wearing a $1,000 suit." "Sounds like justice." Zoe chuckled and sipped her drink. As the night unfolded, Marcus introduced her to several people, some genuinely kind, others politely condescending. But Zoe held her ground. She asked questions, made jokes, and when someone asked where she went to school, she proudly replied, "Community college, 2 jobs, still graduated." Marcus beamed with pride. Then came the real test. A board member named Eleanor Graves, known for her icy demeanor, approached them with a glass of red wine and the poise of a seasoned diplomat. "Marcus," she said coolly. "A word?" He excused himself, leaving Zoe alone for just a moment. But that moment was enough. Eleanor turned to Zoe. You're braver than I thought. Zoe raised a brow. Is that a compliment? A warning? Eleanor replied. This world. Chews up people like you. It'll dress you up, smile in your face, and destroy you the moment you misstep. Zoe didn't flinch. I'm not here to be accepted. I'm here because I was invited, by someone who actually sees me. Eleanor tilted her head, intrigued. Well, we'll see how long that lasts. With that, she walked away. Marcus returned seconds later, concern etched on his face. What did she say? Zoe smiled, lifting her glass. That I'm braver than she thought. They left early, retreating to Marcus's penthouse downtown. Zoe kicked off her flats and collapsed onto the couch. That was insane, she groaned. I met a guy who owns 6 private islands and has a pet cheetah. Marcus laughed. You crushed it. Crushed is one word. Survived might be better. You were brilliant. You didn't shrink. You owned who you are. Zoe looked at him, exhaustion in her eyes. I don't want to change. Marcus, not for them, not even for you. Good, he said, because I didn't fall for someone who blends in. But not all scars are public. Back at the diner a few days later, Zoe faced a different kind of judgment. Some customers treated her like a celebrity. Others stopped coming altogether. Her manager pulled her aside. You're not in trouble, he said gently, but things are getting weird. People think we're part of a reality show or something. Zoe nodded. I get it. You don't have to quit. He added, but if you need to take a step back. She went home that night, confused and restless. The life she'd built, quiet, simple, stable, was slowly unraveling. Later, she met Marcus at their bookstore spot. He saw the weariness in her face immediately. I might have to quit the diner, she admitted. It's becoming a zoo. I can support you if. No, she cut in. That's not what I want. He nodded, understanding. Then what do you want? Zoe sat in silence for a while. I want something that's mine, she said finally. Something that doesn't vanish the moment your world swallows it. Marcus thought for a moment. Then let's build it. He wasn't talking about money, or charity, or image repair. He meant something real, something lasting. Later that week, he introduced her to a space, an old, charming storefront tucked between a florist and a record shop. You could do anything here, he said. Cafe, bookstore, music lessons, whatever you want. Zoe walked through the space, running her fingers along the sunlit windows and scuffed hardwood floors. It felt like the start of something. And for the first time in a long while, Zoe Carter let herself imagine a future she chose. Zoe Carter stood in the middle of the dusty storefront, sunlight pouring in through the front windows. The walls were bare, the floor uneven, and the air carried that old wood scent that hinted at stories long past. She turned slowly, imagining the possibilities. A cozy cafe with books lining the walls? An art space? A community hub with music nights? It felt raw and unfinished, just like her life right now. But it was hers, not borrowed from Marcus, not branded by the media. Just hers. Marcus leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching her light up. You don't have to decide today, he said softly. Zoe turned to him with a half smile. No, but I know I want this. I want something that isn't about what people think. Just something real. He stepped inside and took her hand. Then we'll build it together. The weeks that followed were filled with renovation dust, coffee-fueled brainstorming sessions, and endless trips to vintage furniture shops. Zoe named the place Haven and Hearth, a name that spoke to warmth, safety, and belonging. It wasn't a business venture, it was a declaration, a reclaiming. She chose every book, every lamp, every chipped ceramic mug. The space slowly transformed into a quiet, inviting bookstore cafe with live poetry readings, music from local artists, and shelves curated by heart, not algorithm. And she did it without writing Marcus's name. He offered to fund it, of course, but she declined the big check. Instead, she accepted a modest loan, negotiated terms, and insisted on signing papers without his name attached. I'm not some project, she told him, and I don't need saving. Marcus smiled. You've never needed saving. That's what I admire most. But even as Zoe found new footing, Marcus faced mounting pressure. The board was growing more aggressive. Rumors swirled about a secret vote to remove him as CEO. Investors weren't just nervous now, they were organizing. Landon pulled him aside after a tense quarterly meeting. "They've had enough," he said. "They think your personal life is a distraction. Your speeches are brave, Marcus, but they're not calming shareholders. They think you're unpredictable." "I'm building something better," Marcus replied. "I'm done pretending." "I know," Landon said quietly, "but this world doesn't reward authenticity. It rewards control. They want you to fit back in the box." Marcus looked down at the city skyline from his corner office. The same view he'd stared at for years, now feeling more distant than ever. "I'm not going back," he said. Landon nodded. "Then you better prepare to lose everything." That night, Marcus went to Zoe's place, not the penthouse, not some rooftop bar, just her small apartment, filled with the scent of lavender and warm takeout. He walked in and slumped onto the couch, loosening his tie. Zoe looked up from the counter, where she was pouring tea. "Rough day? They want to push me out." She paused, then walked over and handed him the mug. "Because of me? Because I stopped playing the part they wrote for me." She sat beside him, silent for a long moment. "You don't have to give up everything for me, Marcus." "I'm not giving anything up. I'm choosing something better." She rested her head on his shoulder. "You sure about that?" He nodded. "For the first time in my life, I am." The news broke 2 weeks later. Marcus Reid would step down as CEO of Reid International. The headlines exploded again. Reid out at Reid International. Turmoil or transition. From boardroom to bookstore. The fall, or rise, of Marcus Reid. Ex-CEO chooses love over legacy. The world watched with fascination. But Marcus? He felt free. He'd spent his entire life climbing a ladder built by other people, his father, his board, the media, and now, he was finally standing on solid ground. He visited Haven and Hearth the day after the announcement. Zoe was behind the counter, laughing with a young couple as they picked out books. When she saw him, her eyes softened. "You did it," she said as he approached. "Yeah," he said. "Feels weird, but good." She poured him a coffee and leaned across the counter. "You okay?" He shrugged. "Ask me again in a week." She grinned. "Well, you're officially unemployed. Want a shift here?" He raised an eyebrow. "Do I get an apron?" "Only if you're on pastry duty." They settled into a new rhythm. Marcus no longer had board meetings or press obligations. He spent mornings reading in the back corner of the bookstore, afternoons helping with deliveries, and evenings cooking with Zoe in her tiny kitchen. People kept asking, "What's next?" And Marcus kept answering, "This." Zoe saw him change, not just relax, but transform. The armor he wore as a CEO fell away. He became softer, more patient, more grounded. One afternoon, while restocking shelves, Zoe asked him, "Do you ever miss it? The suits? The power?" He thought for a moment, then smiled. "I miss the coffee machine in my office. Everything else? Not really." She tossed a crumpled receipt at him. "You're impossible. And yet, you love me." She paused. "Yeah, I do." One night, after closing, Zoe found Marcus in the reading nook with a small velvet box in his hand. Her heart stopped. "Don't panic," he said quickly, standing up. "It's not what you think." She blinked. "It's not?" He opened the box. Inside was a vintage key on a silver chain. Old, ornate, delicate. "This was my grandmother's," he said. "She used it to lock her garden gate back in Chicago. She always said it was the key to her favorite place in the world." Zoe looked at it, confused. Marcus took her hand. "You gave me something I never had, Zoe. A favorite place. Somewhere that felt like mine. Somewhere I could just be." She swallowed hard. "This isn't a proposal," he said gently. "This is me asking if I can keep building this life with you. Not as a CEO. Not as a headline. Just as a man who wants to be better." Zoe closed the box and held it to her chest. "Yes," she whispered. "Even if I burn the croissants?" "Especially then." They laughed. And in that quiet little bookstore cafe, filled with paperbacks and mismatched mugs, something stronger than legacy or wealth took root. Love, on their terms. Marcus Reid had always measured success in quarterly gains and stock market headlines. But now, success looked like this. A line of locals outside Haven and Hearth on a Friday evening. Live jazz humming from the corner stage. Zoe Carter behind the counter, laughing with a regular as she frothed oat milk. And him, wearing a soft hoodie instead of a tailored suit, clearing tables and smiling like his heart finally matched his life. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real, and for the first time in his adult life, Marcus didn't need more. Word about the bookstore cafe spread, slowly at first, through friends, social media, and local coverage. Then a popular lifestyle blogger visited and posted a video tour. Suddenly, Haven and Hearth was on every hidden gems in the city list. Customers came from hours away. Influencers began tagging it on Instagram. Some recognized Marcus and asked for photos. Others were stunned to see that billionaire guy handing out biscotti. Zoe handled the attention with grace, always kind, always grounded, but fame, even the wholesome kind, came with pressure. One evening, after closing, she slumped into the armchair in their back room. "I feel like I haven't sat down in a week," she groaned. Marcus rubbed her feet gently, chuckling. "You created something people love. That's the cost." She looked over at him, her face serious. "But I didn't mean for it to get big. You want to scale back?" "No, I want to make sure we don't lose what made it special." "You mean what made you special?" he said. "And we won't." Zoe smiled tiredly. "Promise?" Marcus leaned forward, brushing her hair back. "I promise." But as their cafe blossomed, something else began to grow beneath the surface. Fear. Marcus noticed it first in the small things. Zoe locking the doors twice. Flinching when someone lingered outside too long. Growing quiet when strangers took photos without asking. He didn't press at first. But one night, when she turned down an invitation to speak on a podcast she once admired, he asked gently, "Are you okay?" She hesitated. Then, "Sometimes it feels like it's starting again. The press, the rumors, the feeling that someone's watching me more than they should." Marcus stiffened. "Is someone bothering you?" "No," she said quickly. "Nothing direct. Just DMs, weird comments. Someone left a letter in the tip jar yesterday. No return address. Just said, 'You clean up well for a waitress.'" Marcus's jaw tightened. "That's not okay." "I know," she whispered. "It's just exhausting." He reached for her hands. "You're not alone in this, Zoe. Whatever happens, we face it together." She nodded, trying to smile. "I just hate feeling small again." "You're not small. You're the bravest person I know." She exhaled shakily. "Can we just turn off the world tonight?" He stood and offered his hand. Always. Despite the noise, they held tight to their routine. Sundays were for sleeping in and dancing to old records. Wednesdays were delivery days. Marcus always grumbled about the crates of almond milk. And Friday nights were for live music and storytelling. But change crept in slowly. The first real shift came when Marcus received a call from a venture capital firm in San Francisco. They wanted to invest in Haven and Hearth, turn it into a lifestyle brand, bookstores in 5 cities, subscription boxes, curated experiences. Zoe listened carefully during the meeting, then said, "No." The room went silent. The lead investor blinked. "You're rejecting the offer?" "It's flattering," she said politely, "but this place was never about becoming a brand. It's a heartbeat, not a product." After they left, Marcus looked at her with a mix of admiration and disbelief. "You could have said yes. You could have had a dozen stores by next year." Zoe smiled. "But we'd lose this." He leaned in and kissed her forehead. "Then I'll follow your lead. Always." But life had one more twist. One afternoon, Zoe's mother called with news. Her father, whom she hadn't seen in years, had fallen ill. Zoe hadn't spoken to him since she was 17. He had walked out, left them with unpaid bills and broken promises. But hearing he was in the hospital reopened old wounds. "I don't know if I want to go," she admitted to Marcus that night. "He was never a dad to me." "You don't owe him anything," Marcus said carefully. "But if you need to go for you, I'll be right there." She was quiet a long time. "I think I need to see him. Not for him, for me. To close a door that's been open too long." He nodded. "Then we'll book a flight." They flew to a small town in Oregon, where the hospital was tucked between pine trees and quiet streets. Zoe walked the hall with steady nerves and a storm in her chest. When she entered the room, her father barely recognized her. Time had not been kind to him. The once loud man was now frail, thin, struggling to speak, but his eyes widened when she introduced herself. There was no apology, no great reconciliation, just silence. Then, finally, a whisper. "You did good, kid." Zoe blinked. "What?" He coughed weakly. "Saw you on the news. With that guy. I screwed up, but you turned out better than me." Tears stung her eyes. She didn't stay long. She didn't have to. Closure didn't need years, it just needed honesty. Back home, Zoe stood in the center of Haven and Hearth, breathing in the smell of coffee and old pages. Marcus stood behind her, arms around her waist. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah, I think I finally let go of something I've been carrying for a long time." He kissed her cheek. "You're incredible, you know that?" "Sometimes I believe it," she said softly, "especially when you look at me like that." He chuckled. "You mean like you're the best thing that ever happened to me?" She smiled. "Exactly that." And as the lights dimmed in the cafe that night, Zoe Carter and Marcus Reid didn't just feel safe. They felt ready for whatever came next. Happiness doesn't arrive all at once. It builds, quietly, steadily, like a sunrise. For Marcus Reid and Zoe Carter, happiness was early morning light filtering through the bookstore windows. It was the hum of coffee brewing. It was the rhythm of customers who knew their names and asked how their dog was doing. It was knowing who you are, and who stands beside you. But just as things began to feel stable, life reminded them, nothing stays untouched forever. It started with a text from Marcus's old colleague, Jennifer Cho. "Jennifer, call me. It's important. Something's happening with the board." He hesitated. The board of Reid International had been quiet since his resignation. Too quiet. He called Jennifer the next morning. Her voice was brisk, professional, but there was something underneath it. Concern. "They're talking about going after your name, Marcus," she said, "stripping you from the legacy materials. Your image, your founding rights, your stake, all of it." He blinked. "Why?" "There's a new investor group. They want to rebrand, distance the company from the drama. Your public relationship is still being referenced. They're saying your exit destabilized shareholder trust." "That's ridiculous." "I know, but they're serious, and they've got backing. If you don't push back, they'll erase your contributions entirely." Marcus hung up the call with a pit in his stomach. He didn't miss the suits or the endless meetings. But the company was something he'd built from scratch. It had his father's name on the cornerstone of its first headquarters. And now it was being rewritten, without him. Zoe noticed his distance almost immediately. "You've stirred your coffee 10 times, she said gently, watching him from across the cafe counter. Marcus snapped out of it. "Sorry, just something came up." He told her everything. The board, the potential erasure, the anger that simmered just beneath the surface. Zoe sat beside him and took his hand. "Do you want to fight it?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Part of me wants to walk away and never look back. But another part, it's like someone's trying to steal a piece of my life." "Then don't let them." He looked at her, surprised. "You taught me not to run from the hard things," she said. "You stood up for me when I felt powerless. Maybe now it's your turn to stand up for what you built." Marcus nodded slowly. "You'd be okay if I went back into the fire?" "I'm not afraid of fire anymore," she said softly, "as long as we stay standing in it together." So Marcus made a decision. He called a press conference. Not as a CEO. Not even as a shareholder. Just as Marcus Reid, the man who started it all. In front of a small group of reporters and cameras. He stood at a podium outside the original Reid International building. "I built this company in a garage with 4 friends and a dream." He began. "I walked away to live a different life. But I didn't walk away from my name. Or my values. I will not be erased to make room for someone else's narrative." The speech went viral within hours. Articles praised his courage. Former employees reached out with support. Even some board members hesitated. It wasn't about money anymore, it was about legacy. And Marcus wasn't letting go. Back at Haven and Hearth, Zoe faced her own battle. One of the cafe's longtime employees, Maya, was going through a tough time. Her partner had lost their job. Bills were piling up. Zoe caught Maya crying in the back room one evening. Trying to hide it, Zoe didn't hesitate. She gave Maya a week off. Paid in full. Offered help finding resources. And when Maya said, "I don't want pity," Zoe replied, "It's not pity, it's what community looks like." Word got out, again. But this time, the headlines read, "Zoe Carter, the woman who redefined quiet leadership. From waitress to business owner, a love story with a mission." Zoe didn't chase the spotlight. But when it found her now, she didn't flinch. She stood in it, taller than ever. That weekend, Marcus returned from a short business trip, stepping into the cafe as Zoe arranged flowers on a center table. "You look tired," she said, smiling. "You look perfect," he replied. She walked up and wrapped her arms around his waist. "How'd it go?" "The board backed down," he whispered. "I still have my name. And now I finally feel free." Zoe rested her head on his chest. "We both made it out." "Yeah," he said softly, "and we made something better." That evening, Marcus surprised her. He led her to the rooftop above the cafe, where fairy lights danced in the warm breeze. A small table was set, dinner laid out, jazz playing softly from a speaker. Zoe blinked. "What is all this?" Marcus took her hand. "This is me asking you to make this, our life, permanent." He got down on one knee and pulled out a simple, elegant ring. "Zoe Carter, you are my balance, my fire, my calm. You're the first place I've ever truly felt like I belonged. Will you marry me?" Zoe stood frozen for a moment, hand over her heart. Then tears welled in her eyes. "Yes," she breathed. "Of course, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, and she pulled him into a fierce, joyful kiss. Below them, haven and hearth glowed softly, books and coffee, comfort and courage, all wrapped into one. Later that night, they lay in bed, fingers intertwined, stars twinkling through the skylight above. "You know," Marcus said, "this isn't how I imagined my life would look 5 years ago." Zoe turned to him. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" He smiled. "The best thing." She laughed. "Same." They fell asleep like that, hearts full, futures unfolding before them. Love doesn't end with a proposal. That's just where the next chapter begins. For Marcus Reid and Zoe Carter, the story continued in small, meaningful steps, building a life not just of romance, but of partnership. The wedding was nothing like what the press expected. There were no celebrity guests, no velvet ropes, no designer sponsorships. Instead, it was held in the backyard of a farmhouse Zoe's late mother once adored, a quiet spot just outside the city, where sunlight filtered through old oak trees and birds sang in the distance. They wrote their own vows. Simple, honest. "You reminded me who I am," Zoe said through tears. "And you taught me that love doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be true." "You grounded me," Marcus replied, voice trembling. "And every day, you show me what strength really looks like." Their first dance wasn't choreographed. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. They moved into a small house not far from the cafe. It had creaky floors, overgrown hedges, and a garden Zoe insisted on reviving. Marcus learned to mow the lawn. Zoe learned to let someone else take care of her once in a while. They painted the walls themselves, badly. They hung crooked picture frames filled with moments that mattered. Their first date, the grand opening of Haven and Hearth, a candid shot of them mid-laugh on the bookstore floor. Marcus stepped away from business headlines, but not from purpose. He partnered with nonprofits, mentored young entrepreneurs, and used his resources to fund community initiatives, especially in the neighborhoods where he grew up. He didn't need a title to make a difference. He just needed intention. Zoe expanded the cafe, turning the upstairs into a reading lounge and community center. Local kids came after school to do homework. Veterans met for quiet coffee chats. Book clubs gathered under twinkling lights. People didn't just come for lattes anymore. They came for peace. A year into their marriage, Zoe stood in front of the mirror, staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. Marcus found her a moment later, frozen, speechless. When he saw what she was holding, he wrapped his arms around her slowly, carefully. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded, just processing. He took her hands. "Whatever this means, whatever happens, we'll face it together." She smiled, still dazed. "We're going to be parents." "Yeah," he whispered. "We are." The pregnancy wasn't easy. Morning sickness hit hard. Zoe cried over random commercials and couldn't stand the smell of eggs. But Marcus was there for every appointment, every craving, every 2 a.m. meltdown. When Zoe doubted whether she could be a good mother, Marcus reminded her of the strength she already carried. "You raised yourself. You ran a business. You fought for us," he said one night as they lay in bed. "That child has already won the lottery." She laughed through tears. "You're getting soft, Mr. Reid. I've always been soft for you." Their daughter, Ava Grace Reid, arrived on a rainy Thursday morning, screaming her arrival into the world with lungs full of fire. Marcus cried the first time he held her. Zoe, exhausted but radiant, whispered, "She has your eyes." "No," Marcus said, "she has your strength." They brought her home to a nursery filled with sunlight and second-hand furniture. Zoe rocked her to sleep with old lullabies. Marcus sang badly but with heart. And together, they learned how to soothe a colicky baby, how to sleep in shifts, how to love in new, deeper ways. Years passed. The cafe continued to grow. So did their family. One child became two. Ava was joined by a little brother, Noah, who inherited his father's curiosity and his mother's stubbornness. Marcus walked them to school every morning. Zoe braided Ava's hair and taught her how to read chapter books. Holidays were spent surrounded by friends, staff, neighbors. No one was ever left out. Every year, they opened their home to anyone who needed a place to belong. Their love became something others looked up to, not because it was perfect, but because it was tested, healed, and real. One evening, years down the line, Marcus and Zoe sat on their porch, older now but still impossibly in love. The kids were asleep inside. The air was warm. Fireflies flickered like stars across their yard. "You ever think about how this all started?" Zoe asked, sipping her tea. "A missing wallet, a robbery, a mechanic with a backbone." She smiled. "And a billionaire with a bad attitude." He laughed. "Touché." Zoe leaned against his shoulder. "I wouldn't change any of it." "Me neither," Marcus said. "Every wrong turn led me to you." They sat there quietly, hands intertwined, listening to the night. And in that silence, they knew the life they built was more than either of them ever dreamed. Not because it was grand, but because it was theirs. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Tell Night. At Tell Night, stories remind us that healing begins with hope, and even the gentlest kindness can rewrite a destiny. Don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss a story that could brighten your day or transform your perspective. Until our next story, keep your heart open and your spirit brave.